look at the bracket right now, just to refresh your memory on where things stand. 4 first-round games. And the best part of the playoff is that it's on campus. It's brought to you by AT&T. Winner of this game goes to the Rose Bowl to take on Indiana. The other 3 games all tomorrow, starting at noon with Miami and Texas A&M. That is where College Game Day will be. And, of course, in the Grove, you've got Ole Miss and Tulane. Another rematch from the regular season as Alabama and Oklahoma are. You've got the Lane Kiffin drama as the backdrop. And, of course, John Summerall on his way to Florida.
Yeah, and what's different, obviously, is John Summerall staying to coach and get his team ready to go. We know both these coaches are on their way to new places. Lane Kiffin is already there, so here we go. Trinidad Chambliss, we know he can still do these things. We know what he's capable of doing. And, of course, he has Charlie Weiss Jr. that came back to be able to call this place. I think we're all anxious to see how this could impact Ole Miss. Jake Retzlaff, who left BYU, kind of struggling earlier in the year, and the chance to have a rematch. This guy can run the football. He'll have to do that. Leads Tulane in rushing. And the big question is, can this defense come up with enough turnovers to give themselves a chance at an upset?
JMU against Oregon. Bob Chesley, the head coach, is heading to UCLA to be their head coach, but decided to coach this team, the CFP. They can run the ball. Wayne Knight right there, very dangerous on the edges, 1,200 yards on the season. And Alonzo Barnett, the dual threat quarterback, loves to attack the middle of the field with the ball. But guys, go up against this Oregon defense first up front. Great against the run, but then they also make sure that guys can't get to the second level, so their safeties and linebackers, they can flow, roam, and make tackles. And I've heard that DeCorian Moore and Gary Bryant Jr. just might be available for their offense in this game.
Oh,
yes, sir.
That's a big storyline. Speaking of big storyline, Miami travels down to College Station to take on Texas A&M. Miami, the last team in with an at-large bid, led by Carson Beck, Malachi Tony, and an offense that can obviously do damage, and a defensive line led by Bain that can get to any quarterback. They're going to Texas A&M. They were the last only undefeated SEC team. They lose to Texas in their last game. Marcel Reed with a lot of weapons on the outside, and Conception and Craver, and maybe a running back for the first time, long time, set up to be a magnificent biblical matchup at Kyle Field.
And tonight, Alabama and Oklahoma. Remember Ty Simpson, early NFL-like dimes, clutch plays, making big throws. Not much of that lately. More of this, like what happened against Oklahoma when Eli Bowen went 87 on a pick six. Bowen and the Sooners have the Tide's number. Bowen picked one off against Bama last year, says he wants to keep that streak alive. Mateer said to be healthier. Isaiah Satania's been terrific with big plays. And Mateer hit 3 of 5 throws and traveled 20 yards or further in the air in his last game against LSU. Now, these two, Blue Bloods or Crimson Bloods, are elite. No two programs in college football have more 10-win seasons, more 11-win seasons. You see the national titles. They've combined for 11 Heisman trophies, and they square off again. But the one thing Oklahoma does not have on its resume yet is a win in the college football playoff. 4-team or 12-team, they're 0 for 4. They get a second shot against the team that they're playing for the third time in about a year, Nick. Now, and Oklahoma's kind of had its way with Alabama.
Yeah, well, the first game, Alabama kind of outgained them as well as, but the turnovers in the game just killed them.
Yeah.
Just killed them. And Oklahoma's defense was fantastic. But, what I always worried about as a coach, you work so hard to get to games like this, to make it to the playoffs, and that's what your team worked at, your coaches worked at. But what I always worried about was, how does the time off affect your team? You got 3 or 4 weeks. How does it affect tackling? How does it affect the big guys? How much do they get out of shape? How much do they eat too much? How do you turn it over? The skill guys usually come back quicker in games like this, and I think teams that have great skill have a great chance to be successful in the playoffs.
My turn?
Yep.
Okay. I couldn't hear Jimmy G.
Yeah.
I tell you what, so I live in Miami, right? And I went to their practice. Now, Miami is a team right now that they're eager to show everybody that they belong. Don't forget, when the rankings first came out, they were behind Notre Dame, and they were like pleading their case, scratching, clawing. And then the final rankings, they got what they wanted. They're in the CFP. This is a team I think is very hungry, very desperate to show everybody that they belong. So that trip to College Station tomorrow is the reward that they got. But I think they're ready for this game, Pat.
Yeah, I think Miami, Texas A&M, obviously special. When you talk about the 3 weeks, is it rest or is it rust? I think we shall find out. And then there's two teams that are playing in this college football playoff that are certainly potentially going to be the ones who change the future of the college football playoff. Obviously, whenever the rule was made for the top 5 conference champions to make it into the college football playoff, the 12 team, nobody would have expected 2 group of 5 champions to be in the field. Now, Notre Dame's left out. Tulane and JMU both in. JMU has to take on an Oregon team that's obviously stacked and loaded in Autzen. Could be a tough one. JMU has a lot of wins. Tulane didn't play ass against Ole Miss the first time they played, but inevitably end up losing in a pretty big way. So those 2 teams, obviously, in the college football playoff, we are incredibly happy for them and their story. It's not their fault. But if these games are to get ugly, I think it'll cause change for the future. But if they were able to win, if they were able to have a Cinderella story, some special, magnificent moment in January that leads into an offseason saying anybody could win, that changes college football forever as well.
Yeah, it does. And I think I go back to last year. I remember the first round, I think the average margin was 19 points for the home teams. And now you look at this year, these teams that are hosting, I think their collective home record is 27-2. So they have a huge advantage when they play at home. We know what they're capable of doing. Tulane, as you mentioned, second trip to Vaught Hemingway did not go well. We'll see if this is a different story with John Summerall. JMU in the deep end of the pool in Autzen, let's face it. Bama lost here 24-3 last year, and it was really a game that got out of control. And then Miami this year is an interesting team because Miami didn't leave the state of Florida until November 1st when they went to SMU. They've not seen anything like Kyle Field. I'm not saying they can't go in there and win, but they've not seen anything like they'll see tomorrow. Luckily, they have Carson Beck, who went through the SEC, knows kind of how to handle that kind of atmosphere, but I'm anxious to see how the Canes roll into Kyle Field tomorrow.
Specifically to this game, though, can OU score enough points? Can Bama handle OU's defensive pressure? Because when they did, they made explosive plays, but when they didn't, it was sack fumbles, it was pick six, it was bad stuff happening that affected the game.
17 points off of the turnovers alone. That was the difference in the game.
You want this, you got that. No way, watch them walk right by.